let's go ahead and finish the beetlewing embroidery on the elytra dress. Hi everyone, my name is Caitlin. I'm a living historian who educates other living historians by teaching old-fashioned sewing skills and copying original garments. This has been a year-long project for us. I started this dress probably 8-9 years ago, somewhere in there. I don't even remember how long ago. And I got partially done, as in like part of the bodice got done, before I gave up, and it just went into where projects go to die. And just pulled it out this year, decided I wanted to get it done. Had to refit the whole thing because I was a totally different size than I was 8 years ago. So I had to completely, I think we even recut the bodice. We did all the embroidery on the bodice and the sleeves, and we've been working on the skirt for a couple months now. So I have it to where we have the whole right side of the skirt complete. We just have to finish the left side. So that's what we're going to do today. This will be the last month of beetlewing embroidery. Next month we get to move on, and all of the beetles get outlined in basically gold thread, essentially. That's what we're going to be doing next month, and then a month after that we get to debut it. So we're almost done. This will be the last month we're working on the beetle wings themselves. So if you're getting tired of seeing me stitch through the beetle wings, yeah, this will be our last month of that. But we're basically going to do the exact same thing we did on this side, and my trouble is going to be making sure they're exactly the same. I think what I'm going to do is fold the skirt in half because the skirt is so sheer, and then I can mark where it goes. And I think that's the easiest way to handle this, essentially. But we'll count it all up at the end to see exactly how many beetle wings we're using this project. I'm not going to say I won't add to it throughout the years, but it'll be considered done for now. But I do think down the road, when I have to refit it again, which is, will inevitably happen because things are so fitted in the mid-19th century, then I can add some more if I want to. Yeah, let's go ahead and I guess take it off the mannequin, fold it in half so I can mark this part. The bottom is not what I'm concerned about. The bottom I can easily measure. I might do the measuring it from the other side, but I think it'll just be easier just to measure it. This is what I'm kind of concerned about. So that I definitely want to fold in half. But let's go ahead and get to work on that so that we can start on the embroidery. Alright, let's start the project. So as I was saying before, the first step is going to be folding it in half so that I can mark with a disappearing ink pen where all the embroidery is going to go. This is going to keep my embroidery even on both sides. I mean, I could have measured against the beetle wings like I did before, but I did figure this was going to actually be easier. And I also marked a little bit on the bottom, but I pretty much stopped right there. I figured I would go ahead and get the rest of it done before moving on to the bottom. So next I have to prep all of the wings. This is going to include, there's a little lip on the top of each of the wings, or really they're not wings, they're the hard exterior that protects the wings. But anyway, there's a little lip there where I guess it connects to the rest of the body, and it doesn't sit quite right on the fabric, so I'm using fingernail clippers to cut that off. And then I'm using an awl to poke a hole in both the top and the bottom of each wing. A couple wings did get lost when I was doing this, simply because the bottom wasn't as sturdy as the top and I would crack it in half. I did save those. I figured maybe down the road when I decide I want to redo this whole project, or not redo it, but add more to it, I could probably use those. So I kept them in the bag. I didn't throw them away, but they weren't usable for what I was doing today. And I did this in sections. So I did 50 of them at a time before moving on to sewing, and then I would go back and prep 50 more and go back to sewing. The sewing portion isn't that bad. It does require several stitches to keep them in place. I've learned from doing the little bug beetle wing embroidery bits from the last couple months that they don't like to stay in place very well unless there are the 2 holes, which is why I am now doing 2 holes instead of just the one at the top I used to do. So I try to do 2 stitches at the point and then 3 at the bottom, and that tends to keep the whole thing in place fairly well. Because these were in a straight line or a curved line, I needed them to stay exactly in place so they looked nice. So I wanted to make sure they were very well stitched in. And it didn't actually take as long as I thought it would. It's just one of those things where I have to work my way up to doing this. It takes enough of my effort to where I think it's more of the fact that it's repetitive work, and I don't particularly like repetitive work, so it's just convincing myself to do it is sometimes difficult. But I do have to, as you see there, sometimes mark how it's going to work. I had to be very strategic with how this fit together because of the curve. The bottom curve was enough put together to where if I use the super big wings, because they all are natural products, they're all different sizes, and if I used wings that were too big, they looked too crowded. So it was really, I did have to use some brain power to figure out exactly which wing would fit where to make the whole thing look even, because the wings are not even, and the serpentine makes things a little bit difficult. So all that together, to make it look even, you do have to do a fair bit of planning ahead, essentially, to know what size wings you have and how it's all going to fit together. And I do have a little kitty helper with me at this section. This is Ginger. She and her sister sometimes show up in videos because they really do like my lap. The only thing is, I prefer to sew when they're sleeping on my lap. When they're in a playful mood, as Ginger was today, they like to play with the string or the thread, which is not exactly the most useful thing in the world, but it is cute. So sometimes you have to stop and give cuddles. But yeah, she was very interested in the thread, which again wasn't the easiest thing to work around. We're working with her on learning that thread being used on fabric is for watching, not for playing. It's hard to teach a kitten that. And then when the sides were done, I did the same thing with the bottom of the skirt. I ended up just not measuring it with the measuring tape. I just folded it in half. I figured it would work. There was a few sections where I kind of had to go over it again to make it look a little bit more even, but that's okay. It ended up working out just fine. And then it was back to sewing. So making sure that, again, all the beetle wings were appropriately used for their size and all of that. I actually prefer working on the bottom than the sides because really ideally you would have worked from the top down. So I would have started at the entire top of the skirt and just worked my way down slowly instead of doing it in the sections that I did. I know that now. I didn't know that when I started because I'd never done this before. But now I know that if I ever do this again, which is likely not, you want to start from the top and work your way down. Because you can see that my left hand, my non-dominant hand, is holding the fabric or scrunching it up so that I can more easily reach where I'm putting the wings. Well, that's really hard to do when there's a bunch of wings in the way that you can't really squish because they will, some of them are sturdier than others. Some of them do have, I guess, some sort of mineral deficiency where they're somewhat brittle. I tried not to use those for this project, but there are a couple of them that aren't as sturdy as the others, so you definitely don't want to crush them with your hands. And so getting your hands in a position where it's convenient and comfortable to do the embroidery, but also where you're not crushing any wings or getting poked. I mean, they aren't super sharp, but it is uncomfortable to have your fingers being pressed against one of those ends. So it was a little bit more difficult to do that. I definitely would, if I was doing this again, I would start from the top and work my way down. That's going to be the best way to do this, from what I now understand. But that's okay. I worked around it because the hem embroidery wasn't extensive. I was able to get my hands in there. It just wasn't as comfortable as it, say, could have been. And that's just a live and learn process. I never done anything like this before. I probably never will do something like this again. But it is good information to know. And maybe if you're planning a project like this, 100%, if you're doing a lot of extensive embroidery on the skirt, I would start from the top and work my way down. Or at least start from the middle, work your way down, and then, work from the top up. I definitely would not put the skirt together or like gauge it and put it to the waistband before you did all this embroidery. It would have been a lot easier had it just been in the straight panels. But again, I was wearing it earlier this year before I got the whole embroidery done. So I had to put it together. And it just wasn't worth the work to take it apart to redo it again later. So it was just one of those things I had to work around because I chose to wear it earlier. But if you weren't doing that, I would highly suggest either working from the middle and then working your way down and then going back to the middle and working way up, or starting from the top and just working your way down. It'll save you so much time. It'll be a little bit more comfortable to work it that way. But if I learned a lesson from this project, or the best lesson I probably learned from this project was probably that if I were to do this again, definitely work not the way I worked it. I worked it in visual sections, what would look good visually and what would make a good video as in like do the hem and then do the center and then do one side and then do the other side. That's visually for video, yeah, that makes a lot of sense, but logically from a embroidery standpoint, it really didn't, and it was very inconvenient to do. It was a lot easier to do the hem because it was closer to the bottom, and I didn't have as many wings and beetles to work around. Now, when I was doing the sides, it was extremely difficult to work around those wings. I did have to cut a hole in a seam of the skirt on one side, and we had the pocket on the other side, so I already had a hole there. But I had to cut part of the seam open on one side just to be able to work through that, which I will have to eventually sew up. We're just not there yet. I think I'm going to leave it for the gold work because I might need that little hole there. But yeah, it was a little bit more difficult to work through simply because of how I chose to do it. And I definitely would not choose to do that again, even for a video. I would have just separated it into parts. I would have said, here's part 1, this is what we're going to get to, here's part 2, just working our way down. Because yeah, logically for embroidery, that's what usually makes a lot more sense. I was just trying to do it in visual sections, which I knew not to do, but I was still doing anyway. And yeah, it definitely was not a good choice. I thought it would be easier to work around than it actually was. It was not very easy to work around. But here's our very last little wing right here. So I'll show you the whole process. So again, there's 2 holes, one at the blunt end and the one at the pointy end. I call the pointy end the back, and the front being the more blunt end. So there's 3 stitches on the blunt end, the front, or the top as I would call it. One on either side, and then 1 at the very front, and 2 on the back, again just to keep it in place, because otherwise they will shift around a little bit, and when you're doing a line like this, even though it's a serpentine line, you really don't want that. You want it to be a little bit more on the stable side. But yeah, that's all of our embroidery, at least for the elytra, the beetle wings themselves. We will be back because we have to do all that gold work next. Yeah, I realize everything's kind of falling apart here, but that's what happens when her hips are the size of my waist. It just won't stay up at her waist. So this is I guess we have 1 more month of seeing it on the mannequin. And after that, the very last time y'all see it on me, I just decided not to put it on each time and just do like a final reveal. We still have a hole here, but we're going to use that to do the gold work. So, yeah, there's our beautiful dress. I got the beetle wings all done. So the final count was 1,006, which is far less than I was thinking, but also I did less embroidery than I was originally thinking because I was going to do that whole thing. But again, like how wide, this is the width of the original. So I think just the way I did it, I don't think I can add too much here. I could do something larger on the bottom, say maybe like right here, and then kind of graduate to where it's really kind of small up here. I could do something like that. I think that's going to be a down the road when I have to inevitably refit this whole thing problem. So yeah, at this point I think this is where we're going to leave the beetle wings. Now we are not done because next month and possibly the month after we're going to see how much work it is. I tried to get this I'm still in the middle of September, so I'm going to give myself a month and a half to do the gold work, and hopefully I can get it all done in one video. But all of the beetle wings, particularly on the skirt, they really should be on the bodice too. Maybe we'll save the bodice for December and just do the skirt. That might be a good way to chop it up on me. But every single one has to be outlined in gold. So yeah, it's going to take me a little bit. So I definitely wanted to have a little bit of extra time than just a month to get that done. Now, does this take like a month? No. I sat down for yesterday afternoon and got that entire half done. It takes a couple hours. But to motivate myself, and it does take like a whole day of motivation and like a day of planning it and drawing it out. So like it takes me a day to get this done out of the month, but I need the month to be able to work my way up to it. Because once I'm done a lot of it, I'm like, okay, I'm like ready to take a break for a couple weeks, which is the reason why I take the whole month. But hopefully I can take like a day a week, and I'm hoping it won't take that long to do the gold work. It might. Well, I'll take it in steps. We'll figure out how we're going to do that. But we're going to start with the skirt, and if I happen to have time and get all the gold work done in November, fantastic. That's what we'll do. If not, we'll do the top in December, because I think the top has to be done. I'll have to look into that. But I know the skirt all has to be done. With all the beetle wings, I still have several hundred more. I mean, some of them are broken. I've lost a few over the years, but I probably have at least 300 more. I'm pretty sure I wasn't sure originally if I bought 1,500, if I bought 1,000. Because considering I have several hundred left, I bought. Did the hoop come off? Yeah, that's what happens. That's what y'all do. Goodness, now I gotta fix it. You know what? We're just gonna put it down. It's fine. Not supposed to have a hoop under it anyway. I was just doing it so you can see the embroidery better. Now the skirt's gonna be a little bit more fluffed out because I would have more petticoats, and yeah, definitely more petticoats, and they would be starched. So it would definitely look better than this, which is why I had the hoop underneath, but Cass decided that wasn't gonna happen anymore. Anyway, I think that's about it for today. Thank you so much for watching. If you've enjoyed the video, please like, subscribe to the channel, click that little bell notification so you're notified anytime I upload a new video. And as always, have a fantastic week, and I'll see you back here in the next video.